Book of Heaven, Volume 20, Part 19. January 28th, 1927. How our Lord shall have three kingdoms. The kingdom of the supreme Fiat shall be the echo of creation. How poverty and unhappiness shall be banished. How in our Lord and in the Virgin there was voluntary poverty, not forced. How the divine will is jealous of taking care of its daughter. I was all abandoned in the supreme Fiat, following its acts in the creation, and my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, look at how beautiful is the order of the heavens. In the same way, when the kingdom of the divine will shall have its dominion on earth in the midst of creatures, also on earth there shall be perfect and beautiful order. Then I shall have three kingdoms, one in the celestial fatherland, another in the creation, and the third among creatures. And each one shall be the echo of the other, each one the reflection of the other. All created things have their place of honor, and while they are all ordered and in harmony among themselves, one has no need of the other, because each one of them not only abounds, but overabounds in the goods with which God endowed it in creating it. In fact, having been created by a being who is happy and immensely rich, and whose riches never decrease by giving them, all created things carry the mark of happiness and the abundance of goods of their Creator. Just as all created things, so shall all the children of the kingdom of the supreme Fiat have their place of honor, of decorum, and of dominion. And while possessing the order of heaven, and more than celestial spheres, being in perfect harmony among themselves, the abundance of goods that each one shall possess shall be such and so great that one shall never have need of the other. Each one shall have within himself the source of the goods of his Creator and of his perennial happiness. Therefore, poverty, unhappiness, needs, and evils shall be banished from the children of my will. It would not be decorous for my will, so immensely rich and happy, to have children who would lack something, and would not enjoy all the opulence of its goods that arise continuously. What would you say if you saw the sun poor in light, barely sending a few glimmers to the earth? And if you saw a hem of heaven at one point, with just a few stars, and all the rest without the enchantment of the azure heavens? Would you not say, the one who created the sun does not possess the immensity of the light that arises, and therefore he has the earth lighted by just a few glimmers? He does not possess the power to extend a heaven everywhere, and therefore he has laid just a hem of it above our heads. So you would make for yourself the idea that God is poor in light, and that he does not have the power to extend everywhere the works of his creative hands. But instead, by seeing that the sun abounds so much with light, and that the heavens extend everywhere, you are persuaded that God is rich and possesses the source of light, and therefore he has lost none of his light by endowing the sun with so much light, nor has his power decreased by extending the heavens everywhere. In the same way, if the children of my will shall not abound with everything, one could say that my will is poor and does not have the power to make the children of its kingdom happy. That shall never be. On the contrary, because it shall be the image of the kingdom that my will has in the creation, just as the heavens extend everywhere and abound with stars, and the sun abounds with light, the air with birds, the sea with fish, the earth with plants and flowers. In the same way, since the kingdom of the supreme Fiat echoes the creation, the children of my kingdom shall be happy and shall abound with everything. Therefore, each one shall possess the fullness of goods and full happiness in the place in which the supreme will has placed him. Whatever the condition and the office they shall occupy, all shall be happy of their destiny. And since the kingdom of the supreme Fiat shall be the perfect echo of the kingdom that my will possesses in the creation, one sun shall be seen up high, and another sun down below in the midst of the creatures, who shall possess this kingdom. The echo of the heavens shall be seen in these fortunate children, that they shall populate with stars with their acts. Even more, each one of them shall be a heaven and a distinct sun, because wherever my will is present, it cannot be without heaven and without sun. Rather, as it takes possession of each of its children, it shall form its heaven and its sun, because it is its nature that wherever it has its stable possession, its sanctity, its endless light, it is like heaven and sun that it forms and multiplies everywhere. But this is not yet all. The creation, echo of the celestial fatherland, contains music, the royal march, the spheres, the heavens, the sun, the sea, and all possess order and perfect harmony among themselves, and they make their round continuously. This order, this harmony, and this making their round without ever stopping, form such admirable symphony and music that it could be said to be like the breath of the supreme Fiat blowing into all created things like many musical instruments, and forming the most beautiful of all melodies, such that, if creatures could hear it, they would remain ecstatic. Now, the kingdom of the supreme Fiat shall have the echo of the music of the celestial fatherland and the echo of the music of creation. The order, the harmony, and their continuous making their round around their Creator shall be such and so great that each one of their acts, words, and steps shall be a distinct melody, like many different musical instruments that shall receive the breath of the divine volition, in such a way that everything they do shall be as many distinct musical concerts that shall form the joy and the continuous feast of the kingdom of the divine Fiat. For your Jesus, there shall no longer be difference between remaining in the celestial fatherland and descending to stay in the midst of creatures in the kingdom of the supreme Fiat upon earth. Then our work of creation shall sing victory and full triumph, and we shall have 3 kingdoms in one, symbol of the sacrosanct Trinity, because all our works carry the mark of He who created them. After this, I was thinking to myself, though the true children of the supreme Fiat shall be happy, and shall abound with everything, yet my Queen Mamma and Jesus himself, who was the very divine will, were poor on this low earth. They suffered the pains and the hardships of poverty. And my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, true poverty is when a creature is in need. One wants to take, but has nothing to take, and is forced to ask others for a bare means of living. This poverty is of necessity, and almost forced. Instead, both in me and in the celestial Mamma, in whom there was all the fullness of the eternal Fiat, it was not poverty of necessity, and even less forced, but it was voluntary poverty, spontaneous poverty, squeezed by the press of divine love. Everything was our own. At one wish of ours, sumptuous palaces would have been raised, and banquets prepared with foods never before seen and tasted. And in fact, when it was needed, at a little wish of ours, even the birds served us, bringing us fruits, fish, and other things in their beaks, making feast because they were serving their Creator and their Queen. With their trilling, singing, and warbling, they played for us the most beautiful melodies, so much so that in order not to attract the attention of creatures with our uniqueness, we had to command them to depart, to continue their flight under the vault of the heavens, where our will was waiting for them. And obedient, they would withdraw. Therefore, our poverty was of love. It was a poverty of example, to teach creatures detachment from the low things of the earth. It was not poverty of necessity, nor could it be so, in an absolute way, because wherever the fullness, the life of my will reigns, all evils end, as though under one single blow, and they lose life. Then, since most Reverend Father de Francia had heard that I was with a fever, he let me know that, if I were in need, I could take whatever I needed from the money he had left with me for one of his works. And my lovable Jesus, on coming, almost smiling, said to me, "My daughter, let Father know, in my name, that I thank him, and I shall reward the goodness of his heart for the care he has for you. However, let him know that the daughter of my will has no need of anything, for my will makes her abound with everything. Even more, it is jealous that others might offer something to her, because it alone wants to give everything to its daughter. In fact, wherever my divine will reigns, there is no fear that natural means and abundance of goods might do harm. On the contrary, the more means she has, and the more abundance she enjoys, the more she looks at the power, the goodness, the richness of the supreme Fiat in them, and she converts everything into most pure gold of divine will. So the more my will gives to her, the more it feels glorified in carrying out its life in the creature, in offering its own things to the one who lets it dominate and reign. It would be absurd if a very rich father had poor children. Such a father would deserve to be condemned. And besides, what would be the purpose of his riches, if the birth that came from his own body, his very children, conducted a life of hardships and miseries? Would it not be a dishonor for this father, and an unbearable bitterness for these children, to know that, while the father is extremely rich, they lack everything and can hardly satisfy their hunger? If this would be absurd and a dishonor for a father in the natural order, much more so in the supernatural order of the Supreme Fiat. The Supreme Fiat is more than father, for it contains the fount of all goods, and therefore, wherever it is present, happiness reigns, and it makes one abound with everything. More so, since, with the soul who has the possession of the divine will, it administers, to soul and body, a sharp and penetrating sight, in such a way that she penetrates into the natural things that hide it as a veil, and tearing these veils, in the natural things, she finds the noble queen of the divine will reigning and dominating within her. So natural things disappear for her, and in all things she finds that adorable will that she possesses. She kisses it, she adores it, and everything becomes divine will for the soul. Therefore, each additional natural thing is one new act of divine will for her that she possesses. So natural things are means for the one who is child of my will, in order to make known more what my will does, can do, and possesses, and to what excessive point it loves the creature. Do you want to know, then, why creatures lack natural means, and many times these are snatched away from them, and they reduce themselves to the most squalid misery? First, because they do not possess the fullness of the Supreme Fiat. Second, because they overwhelm natural things, and put nature in the place of God. Nor do they look at the supreme will in the natural things, but greedy, they become attached to them, to form a vain glory for themselves, an esteem that blinds them, an idol for their hearts. Given this, it is necessary that natural means be lacking, in order to put their souls in safety. But for the one who is child of my will, all these dangers do not exist, and therefore I want them to abound with everything, and to lack nothing. J. M. January 30th, 1927. Why Jesus did not write. How in these manifestations there are neither threats nor frights, but the echo of the celestial fatherland. When this kingdom shall come. How the pains of the Most Holy Virgin and those of our Lord were pains of office, and how they possessed true happiness. Power of voluntary pains. Happiness of the kingdom of the Supreme Fiat. I was thinking to myself, My sweet Jesus told me many times that I was to imitate him in everything. Yet he never wrote. Only once it is said in the Gospel that he wrote, and not even with a pen, but with his finger. As for me, instead, he wants me to write. So he wants to make me go out of his imitation. He did not write it all, and I must write so much. Now, while I was thinking of this, he came as a gracious little child, and placing himself in my arms, drawing his face close to mine, he told me, "My daughter, give me your kisses, and I shall give you mine." Then, after I kissed him various times, he incited me to kiss him again, and then he said to me, "My daughter, do you want to know why I did not write?" Because I was to write through you. It is I who animate your intelligence, who feed you the words, who give motion to your hand with mine, to make you hold the pen and write the words on paper. So it is I who write, not you. You do nothing but pay attention to what I want to write. Therefore, all your work is attention. The rest I do all by myself. Do you yourself not see how many times you do not have the strength to write, and you decide not to do it? And in order to make you touch with your own hand that it is I who write, I invest you, and animating you with my own life, I myself write what I want. How many times have you not experienced this? Now, since an age was to pass before making known the kingdom of the supreme Fiat, to allow some time in order to first make known the kingdom of redemption, and then the other one, of the divine Fiat, I decreed not to write at that time, but to write together with you, through you, when this kingdom would be nearer. Also to give a new surprise to creatures of the excess of love of this will of mine, what it has done, what it has suffered, and what it wants to do for love of them. Many times, my daughter, novelties bring new life, new goods, and creatures are very much drawn to novelties, and let themselves be as though carried by the novelty. More so since the novelties of the new manifestations about my divine will, that have a divine strength and a sweet enchantment, and that shall rain down like celestial dew upon souls burnt by the human will, shall be bearers of happiness, of light, and of infinite goods. There are no threats in these manifestations, nor any fright. And if there is anything about fear, it is for those who want to remain in the maze of the human will. But then, in all the rest, one can see nothing but the echo, the language of the celestial fatherland, the balm from on high that sanctifies, divinizes, and makes the down payment of the happiness that reigns only in the blessed fatherland. This is why I delight so much in writing what regards the divine Fiat, because I write things that belong to my fatherland. Too perfidious and ungrateful shall be those who shall not recognize in these manifestations of mine the echo of heaven, the long chain of love of the supreme will, the communion of goods of our celestial Father that he wants to give to creatures. and as though wanting to put aside everything that has passed in the history of the world, he wants to begin a new era, a new creation, as if the new history of creation were just now beginning. Therefore let me do, because whatever I do is of highest importance. After this I said to him, My love, it seems that more than anything, you love this kingdom of the eternal Fiat very much. In it, you concentrate all your love, all your works, and you almost boast that they shall serve this kingdom. If you love it so much, when shall it come? Why don't you hasten in making it come? And Jesus added, My daughter, when the knowledges about my divine will have done their course, in view of the great good that they contain, goods that no creature has thought about until now, that the kingdom of my will shall be the outpouring of heaven, the echo of the celestial happiness, the fullness of terrestrial goods. So in view of this great good, unanimously they shall yearn, they shall ask that my kingdom come soon. And so does the whole creation in its mute language, mute only in appearance, because inside of it there is my will, asking for its rights, with loud and eloquent voice, to be known, to dominate, and to reign over all. Therefore one shall be the echo from one end of the earth to another, one the sigh, one the prayer that shall be unleashed from all beings. May the kingdom of the supreme Fiat come. Then triumphantly it shall come into the midst of creatures. From here the necessity of the knowledges. These shall be incitements, and shall whet the appetite of creatures for tasting a food so delicious. And they shall feel all the will, the yearning, to live in a kingdom so happy, so as to free themselves from the tyranny and the slavery in which their own wills have kept them. And as they advance in the knowledge of all the manifestations, of the goods contained in the supreme Fiat, they shall find your norms, how you have turned heaven and earth upside down, praying your round everywhere, and asking that this kingdom might soon become known. They shall find what you have suffered to obtain for them such a great good, how they must conduct themselves, and what they must do in order to have free access to live in it. Therefore it is necessary to make everything known, so that my kingdom may be all complete, and nothing may be lacking to it, either the greatest or the smallest things. So certain things that to you seem to be small may be a divine rock transformed into most pure gold, that shall form part of the foundations of the kingdom of my supreme will. After this I was thinking to myself, my sweet Jesus sings so much the praises of the happiness of the kingdom of the supreme Fiat, yet he himself, who is the very divine will, and my celestial mamma, who possessed it as whole, were not happy on earth. Rather, they were the ones who suffered the most on earth. And even myself, he says that I am the firstborn daughter of his will. Yet he has kept me 43 years and more, confined in a bed. And Jesus alone knows what I have suffered. It is true that I have also been a happy prisoner, and I would not exchange my happy destiny, even if they offered me scepters and crowns, because what Jesus has given me has rendered me more than happy. Yet, apparently, to the human eye, this happiness disappears. Therefore, it seems that this happiness, spoken by Jesus, clashes, if one thinks of his pains, of those of the sovereign queen, and of my own state, the least of his creatures. But while I was thinking about this, my sweet Jesus, surprising me, told me, "My daughter, there is an immense difference between the one who must form a good, a kingdom, and one who must receive it in order to enjoy it. I came upon earth to expiate, to redeem, to save man. And in order to do this, I had to receive the pains of creatures and take them upon myself as if they were my own. My divine mamma, who was to be co-redemptrix, was not to be dissimilar from me. Rather, the 5 drops of blood that she gave me from her most pure heart in order to form my little humanity came out of her crucified heart. For us, the pains were offices that we came to fulfill. Therefore they were all voluntary pains, not impositions of a fragile nature. However, you must know that in spite of so many pains of ours that we had in order to carry out our office, highest happiness, unending and ever new joys, continuous paradise, were inseparable from me and from my Queen Mother. It was easier for us to separate from our pains, because they were not things intrinsic to us, things of nature, but things of office, than to separate from the sea of the immense happinesses and joys that the nature of our divine will, that we possessed, produced in us, as things that were our own and intrinsic to us. Just as the nature of the sun is to give light, and that of water to quench one's thirst, that of fire to warm, and to turn everything into fire, and if they did not do so, they would lose their nature. So it is the nature of my will to make happiness, joy, and paradise arise wherever it reigns. Will of God and unhappiness does not exist, nor can exist, or its complete fullness does not exist. And this is why the rivulets of the human will form bitternesses for the poor creature. For us, because the human will had no access into us, happiness was always at its peak. The seas of joys were inseparable from us. Even when I was on the cross, and my mamma was crucified at my divine feet, perfect happiness never dissociated from us. And if this could happen, I would have had to go out of the divine will, dissociate myself from the divine nature, and act only with the human will and nature. Therefore, our pains were all voluntary, chosen by our very selves as the office that we came to fulfill. They were not fruits of the human nature, of fragility, or of the imposition of a degraded nature. And besides, don't you remember that your pains, too, are pains of office? Voluntary pains? In fact, when I called you to the state of victim, I asked you if, voluntarily, you would accept. And you, with full will, accepted and pronounced the fiat. Some time passed, and I repeated to you my refrain, if you would accept to live in and with my divine will. And you repeated the fiat that, regenerating you to new life, made you its daughter, to give you the office and the pains that befit it for the fulfillment of the kingdom of the supreme fiat. My daughter, voluntary pains have such power over the divinity as to have the strength, the empire, to tear the womb of the celestial Father, and from this tearing that they form in God, make seas of graces overflow, forming the triumph of the supreme majesty and the triumph of the creature who possesses this empire of her voluntary pains. Therefore, both for the great portent of redemption and for the great prodigy of the kingdom of my fiat, voluntary pains were needed, pains of office that were to be animated by a divine will, and holding empire over God and over creatures, they were to give the great good that their office enclosed. Therefore, my praised happiness of the kingdom of the divine fiat does not clash, as you say, just because I was the divine will itself, and I did suffer, and just because I have kept you in a bed for so long. The one who must form a good, a kingdom, must do one thing: suffer, prepare the necessary things, and conquer God in order to obtain it. Those who must receive it must do something else. That is, receive it, appreciate it, and be grateful to the one who has battled and suffered, and after winning, gives them his conquests to make them happy. Therefore, the kingdom of my will in the midst of creatures shall bring the echo of the happiness of heaven, because one shall be the will that must reign and dominate in both one and the other. And just as my humanity was formed from the most pure blood of the crucified heart of the sovereign queen, and redemption was formed from my continuous crucifixion, and on Calvary I placed the seal of the cross on the kingdom of the redeemed ones, in the same way, the kingdom of the supreme fiat shall come out of a crucified heart, as my will, crucifying yours, shall issue its kingdom and happiness for the children of its kingdom. This is why, from the time I called you to the state of victim, I always spoke to you about crucifixion. And you thought it was the crucifixion of hands and feet, and I let you run in this crucifixion. But it was not this one. It would not have been enough to make my kingdom come out. The complete and continuous crucifixion of my will in your whole being was needed. And this was precisely what I intended to speak to you about. That your will would undergo the continuous crucifixion of mine in order to issue the kingdom of the supreme fiat. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 20, Part 19. Fiat.